The Appalachian foothills hold many secrets, but none quite like the one that unfolded in the shadows of its ancient trees. Sarah Jenkins, a woman who found solace in nature despite the unpredictability of her own life, never imagined that one fateful day, the wilderness would offer her a bond that defied all logic. When a fragile bobcat kitten, abandoned and weak, crossed her path, it seemed like another challenge for Sarah to face. But as she fought to save him, little did she know that the true test of survival would not be the kitten's, but her own. What happens when the lines between life and death blur, and a creature bound to the wild steps in to make a difference? This is a story of rescue, survival, and the mysterious ties that bind us to the creatures of the earth in ways we may never fully understand. The early morning mist clung to the Appalachian foothills of western North Carolina like a gossamer veil, transforming the dense forest into a mysterious realm of shadows and whispers. Sarah Jenkins adjusted her backpack and checked her GPS coordinates one last time before venturing deeper into the wilderness. At 32, she had spent countless hours exploring these remote trails, finding solace in the untamed beauty of nature, despite, or perhaps because of, her epilepsy diagnosis 12 years ago. The condition had altered the trajectory of her life, forcing her to abandon her dreams of becoming a wilderness guide. Yet, rather than letting it defeat her, Sarah had adapted. She now worked as a freelance nature photographer, selling her work to outdoor magazines and maintaining a popular blog about accessible hiking trails for people with various health conditions. Her motto was simple: nature doesn't discriminate. It welcomes everyone who respects its rules. That morning, in early May, Sarah had set out to photograph spring wildflowers for an upcoming article. The weather was perfect, overcast but dry, with just enough light filtering through the clouds to create the soft illumination she preferred for her macro shots. She had already captured some stunning images of trillium and wild geranium when a sound caught her attention. A weak, plaintive mewing that seemed utterly out of place in these woods. Sarah paused, her hand instinctively moving to the medical alert bracelet on her wrist, a habit she'd developed whenever something unexpected occurred. The sound came again, this time slightly clearer. It reminded her of a domestic kitten, but she knew she was too far from any residential areas for that to be likely. Following the noise with cautious steps, she pushed through a thick patch of mountain laurel. There, in a shallow depression beneath a fallen log, lay a sight that made her heart skip a beat. A baby bobcat, no more than a few weeks old. Its spotted fur was matted, and its tiny body trembled with each labored breath. Sarah knew immediately something was terribly wrong. Bobcat kittens rarely strayed from their mothers at this age, and this one showed undeniable signs of distress: dehydration, weakness, and what appeared to be an injury to one of its hind legs. Years of outdoor experience had taught Sarah when to intervene and when to let nature take its course. She scanned the area for signs of the mother or siblings, but found none. Instead, she discovered traces of a recent landslide, about 50 yards uphill. Fresh earth and broken branches told a story of destruction that had likely separated this kitten from its family. "Hey there, little one," Sarah whispered, keeping her voice soft and steady as she slowly removed her outer fleece jacket. "Let's get you some help." Using skills learned from various wilderness first aid courses, she carefully wrapped the kitten in her jacket, noting how it offered surprisingly little resistance, a concerning sign of its weakened state. The tiny predator's eyes, though glazed with exhaustion, fixed upon her with an intensity that seemed to pierce straight through to her soul. "I'm going to call you Shadow," she murmured. the name coming to her spontaneously as she thought of the fleeting, elusive beauty of the wild cats. Because right now, you need someone to protect you. Sarah knew she had to act quickly. The nearest wildlife sanctuary was an hour's drive away, and the kitten's condition appeared critical. She activated her phone's GPS, grateful for the signal strength, and began the careful journey back to her Subaru Outback, parked at a remote trailhead. The drive to Blue Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary was tense, with Sarah frequently glancing at the makeshift nest she'd created in a cardboard box on her passenger seat. She'd managed to get a few drops of water into the kitten using the squeeze bottle from her hiking pack, but Shadow's breathing remained shallow and rapid. The sanctuary sat at the end of a long gravel road, its wooden buildings blending harmoniously with the surrounding forest. As Sarah pulled up to the main office, a tall figure emerged from the doorway. A man in his mid-30s wearing olive green cargo pants and a navy blue polo shirt with the sanctuary's logo. "I got your call," he said, striding quickly to her car. "I'm Ryan Peterson, the senior wildlife rehabilitator here." His voice was warm but professional, his movements efficient as he helped Sarah carefully remove the box containing Shadow. Ryan's initial examination of the Bobcat kitten was thorough and gentle. "Male, probably about 4 weeks old," he muttered, more to himself than to Sarah. "Severe dehydration, possible fracture in the left hind leg, and what looks like the early stages of pneumonia." He glanced up at Sarah, his green eyes serious but kind. "You did the right thing bringing him in. Another day out there and he wouldn't have made it." Over the next several hours, Sarah watched as Ryan and the sanctuary's veterinarian worked to stabilize Shadow. She filled out paperwork, provided detailed information about where she'd found the kitten, and answered countless questions about the condition in which she'd discovered him. "You know," Ryan said as they watched Shadow receive fluids through an IV, "most people would have either left him there or tried to keep him as a pet. Both would have been death sentences. You showed remarkable judgment." Sarah smiled, touched by the compliment, but more concerned about the tiny patient. "Will he make it?" Ryan's expression was cautiously optimistic. "His vitals are improving, and he's responding well to the antibiotics. The next 48 hours will be crucial, but I think he's got a fighting chance." He paused, studying Sarah's face. "You're welcome to come back and check on him. We always appreciate when rescuers take a genuine interest in the animal's recovery." That was how it began. Sarah's regular visits to Blue Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary to monitor Shadow's progress. Each visit revealed not only the bobcat's growing strength, but also Ryan's remarkable dedication to his work. She learned that he had given up a lucrative career in environmental law to pursue his true passion for wildlife rehabilitation, taking courses in veterinary medicine and animal behavior to better serve the creatures in his care. Shadow's recovery was gradual but steady. His leg healed cleanly, thanks to Ryan's skilled care, and his pneumonia responded well to treatment. As the weeks passed, Sarah found herself spending more time at the sanctuary, volunteering to help with other animals and learning about wildlife rehabilitation from Ryan. Their shared passion for nature and animal welfare sparked countless conversations that often stretched late into the evening. Ryan was fascinated by Sarah's photography work and her determination to make outdoor experiences accessible to people with medical conditions. In turn, Sarah was drawn to his gentle strength and the way he approached each injured animal with equal measures of compassion and respect. "You know what I love about this work?" Ryan said one evening as they watched Shadow, now nearly recovered, practicing his hunting skills with a training toy. "Every animal that comes through here has a story, a fight for survival. When we help them return to the wild, we're not just saving individual creatures. We're maintaining the balance of the entire ecosystem. Sarah nodded, understanding completely. It's like my epilepsy in a way, she replied thoughtfully. When I was first diagnosed, I thought my life in the outdoors was over. But instead, I found new ways to connect with nature, to tell its stories through my camera lens. Sometimes, limitations just lead us to different paths. Their first kiss happened naturally, almost inevitably. One sunset as they released a rehabilitated barred owl back into the wild. The bird's silent flight into the gathering dusk seemed to mirror the quiet way their hearts had found each other. Gradually, then all at once, as their relationship deepened, Sarah began spending more time at the sanctuary. She set up a small office in one of the auxiliary buildings where she could work on her blog and photo editing, while remaining close to both Ryan and Shadow. The Bobcat kitten had grown into a healthy juvenile, but his release date kept being postponed due to various minor setbacks. He's almost ready, Ryan would say, but his hunting success rate with live prey isn't quite where it should be, or we need to work a bit more on his fear response to larger predators. Sarah suspected that Ryan, like her, had grown attached to the fierce little cat who had brought them together, though they both knew release was the ultimate goal. Then came the morning that changed everything. Sarah had been experiencing more frequent seizures in the preceding weeks, a fact she'd been reluctantly discussing with her neurologist. That day, she arrived at the sanctuary early, planning to photograph Shadow's training session for her blog. She remembered setting up her camera equipment, remembered Ryan bringing her a cup of coffee, remembered the way the morning light slanted through the trees. And then, nothing. Ryan's account of what happened next would later fill in the terrifying gaps. He had been working with another rehabilitator when he heard the crash of equipment hitting the floor. He found Sarah unconscious, her body rigid, her breathing shallow and irregular. Despite his first aid training and quick response, she showed no signs of recovery from what appeared to be a severe seizure. The paramedics arrived within 15 minutes, but their efforts to revive Sarah seemed futile. Her vital signs were so faint as to be nearly undetectable. At the local hospital, after hours of attempted intervention, the attending physician made the devastating pronouncement: Sarah Jenkins had passed away. The medical examiner cited complications from an epileptic seizure as the cause of death. Ryan, grief-stricken and in shock, took charge of the funeral arrangements, knowing from their many conversations that Sarah had wanted a green burial, one that would return her body to the nature she had so loved. The service was scheduled for 3 days later at Greenhaven Natural Cemetery, a beautiful property adjacent to National Forest land. Ryan had arranged for Sarah's simple pine coffin to be placed beneath a mature white oak tree, its branches spreading protectively overhead like embracing arms. The morning of the funeral dawned clear and cool, with a hint of autumn in the air despite the late summer date. Friends, family, and members of the local outdoor community gathered to pay their respects. Ryan stood quietly by the coffin, his heart heavy with unspoken words and unrealized dreams. Then, something absolutely extraordinary happened. Something that would later be described as either a miracle or a testament to the mysterious bonds between humans and animals. Shadow, who had been secured in his rehabilitation enclosure at the sanctuary 3 miles away, somehow managed to escape. Sanctuary staff would later find a small gap in the enclosure roof, though how the bobcat had reached it remained a baffling mystery. The first indication of Shadow's presence at the funeral was a rustle in the underbrush, followed by the appearance of the young bobcat himself. now nearly full-grown. Before anyone could react, he padded silently to Sarah's coffin and lay down beside it, his tawny fur brushing against the light wood. Initial attempts to remove him were met with low growls. Not aggressive, but clearly communicating his intention to stay. Ryan, recognizing something in the cat's behavior that he couldn't quite explain, called off the attempts. "Let him be," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. He's saying goodbye in his own way, but Shadow didn't leave after the service. As the hours passed and the funeral attendees gradually departed, the Bobcat remained, his eyes fixed on the coffin with an unwavering intensity that Ryan had only seen once before, when Sarah had first brought him to the sanctuary, fighting for his life. It was this unusual behavior that finally triggered something in Ryan's memory. A case study he'd read during his veterinary training about animals detecting physiological changes in humans. With trembling hands, he called 911. "This is going to sound crazy," he told the dispatcher, his voice urgent. "But I need emergency medical personnel at Greenhaven Natural Cemetery immediately. I think we may have made a terrible mistake." The paramedics arrived to find an extraordinary scene. A full-grown bobcat guarding a coffin, and a distraught man insisting they check for signs of life. To their credit, they agreed to investigate, though their expression suggested they were merely humoring him. What they discovered would later be documented in medical journals. Sarah was alive, trapped in a state of catalepsy, a rare condition that can accompany severe seizures, causing such profound muscle rigidity and reduced vital signs that it can be tragically mistaken for death. The condition was so unusual that the initial medical team had missed it, and only Shadow's acute senses had detected the faint signs of life that human instruments had failed to register. Sarah was rushed to the regional medical center, where specialized treatment gradually brought her back to consciousness. Her first clear memory was of Ryan's face, tears streaming down his cheeks as he held her hand, and the strange but comforting knowledge that somewhere nearby, a bobcat named Shadow had refused to let her go. The recovery process was long and complex. Sarah's neurologist adjusted her medication regimen and implemented new monitoring protocols to prevent future episodes of catalepsy. Throughout her hospital stay, Ryan remained by her side, dividing his time between caring for her and managing the sanctuary. Shadow, meanwhile, had been safely returned to his enclosure at the sanctuary, though his behavior had changed subtly. He seemed more settled, more ready for the independence of life in the wild. It was as if his critical role in saving Sarah had marked a turning point in his own journey toward release. 2 months after her near burial, Sarah stood with Ryan at the edge of a remote clearing in the national forest, watching as Shadow took his first steps toward true freedom. The bobcat paused at the forest's edge, turning to look back at them one last time. In that moment, Sarah felt she could read the message in his golden eyes. Some bonds transcend the boundaries between species, between life and death, between wild and tame. As Shadow disappeared into the undergrowth, Ryan wrapped his arm around Sarah's shoulders. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "in all my years of wildlife rehabilitation, I've never seen anything like what happened with him. It's as if he was meant to find you that day in the woods, meant to be there when you needed him most." Sarah leaned into Ryan's embrace, her camera capturing one last photo of the space where Shadow had vanished. "I used to think I rescued him," she replied, a soft smile on her face. "But now, I'm not so sure who rescued whom." The story of Sarah, Ryan, and Shadow became something of a legend in wildlife rehabilitation circles, a breathtaking reminder that the connections between humans and animals run deeper than science can fully explain. Sarah's blog post about the experience went viral, bringing much-needed attention to both epilepsy awareness and the vital importance of wildlife sanctuaries. 1 year later, Ryan proposed to Sarah in the very same clearing where they had released Shadow. As they stood there, sharing their plans for a future together, a familiar figure emerged briefly from the shadows, a healthy adult bobcat, his spotted coat gleaming in the dappled sunlight. He regarded them calmly for a moment before melting back into his forest home, a living, breathing reminder that love, in all its astonishing forms, has the power to bridge the gap between life and death, between wild and domestic, between what we can explain and what we can only feel in our hearts. Sarah and Ryan were married the following spring in a small ceremony at the sanctuary, their vows including a solemn promise to continue their work protecting and rehabilitating wildlife, forever honoring the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them together. They established a foundation dedicated to supporting wildlife rehabilitation centers and promoting research into the incredible connection between animals and human health. Occasionally, sanctuary staff would report glimpses of a large bobcat in the surrounding forest, one that seemed to watch their work with unusual interest. Whether it was Shadow or not, these sightings served as a poignant reminder that some stories don't truly end. They simply change form, like the seasons, like life itself, creating new chapters in the endless cycle of nature's narrative. Years later, when visitors to the sanctuary would ask about the framed photograph hanging in the main office, the one showing a bobcat lying guard over a simple pine coffin, Sarah would smile, a touch of wonder still in her eyes, and tell them that sometimes the most powerful love stories aren't between humans at all, but between all living creatures who share this remarkable planet. And in the distance, if they listened carefully, they might just hear the wild cry of a bobcat, reminding them that miracles can wear fur and walk on 4 legs, and that the heart's capacity for love knows absolutely no bounds. The valuable lesson here is profound. Listen to the subtle whispers of nature. Trust in the inexplicable bonds between species, and remember that life can surprise you with its resilience and the unexpected ways love and connection can manifest, even in the face of apparent tragedy. Always hold on to hope and recognize that sometimes the most crucial help comes from the most unlikely source. What an incredible journey, right? Let me know what you thought of this story in the comments below. Rate it out of 10. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more amazing tales.